Welcome to part 3 of From Animal to Advocate, my interview with Marc MacYoung. This has been getting a lot of great feedback. I'm glad you guys are enjoying it. I enjoyed doing it. Before we get into it, of course, please go to surviveviolence.com, put your email in there, get your free masterclass, and also you will get all the information on the latest information coming from any of the subject matter experts, any of our seminars, any of our offers, and any new information on what's going on with the channel. Make sure you join the channel, subscribe please, and hit the notifications, and also make your comments because that's what helps grow the channel. Now, getting to part 3 of my time with Marc MacYoung. We left off. He's about to give you, some really good information. I like leaving these right at the cliffhangers where we're about to enter in some new information. But again, I hope you're taking notes on this. This is information dense. Marc has been in the business for years. He's now solely, pretty much practicing the advocacy side of helping people that have been prosecuted for self-defense. They took action in a situation where they believed they were using self-defense. And Marc and his, advisors go in and work with lawyers to give them the best information to help their clients make sure that it gets ruled a self-defense. So why is this good for us? Well, this is good for us because you've got a guy who understands violence. You've got a guy who has a history of, hanging around in some really rough areas, dealing with really rough people. He's an amazing instructor that way. And now he's able to use all of that knowledge to help people really clarify what is self-defense. And so a lot of what you're about to get is going to, prepare you to make sure that you don't make any of the mistakes, and that a lot of tried and true, quote unquote, advice that you hear oftentimes can still get you in trouble. So, again, we're going to go deep on this. Really looking forward to it. Here is part 3 of Marc MacYoung.
You keep on asking these simple questions. Understand most violence is illegal.
Yes.
Okay. The state has a monopoly on violence. Now, this has changed over the years and not for the better. Okay. I have dealt with prosecutors that honestly believe that if anybody dies, there was a crime. I've run across more that seem to think if there was any physical violence, somebody's got to go to jail. Okay. The state of our legal system is a totally different issue, but the idea of there are certain forms of violence that are legally allowed. Now, one of the things that understand that words do not mean the same thing in the law as they do the way you and I use it. Okay, so when you speak legalese, it's like speaking a different language. Okay, and I say language rather than dialect because it's like you keep on using that word. I do not think it means what you think it means. I mean, it is just way the hell gone. One of the things that people like to say, "Oh, I was justified. I was defending myself." Okay. First of all, did you know that justification is a verb, not a noun? Okay. It's not a matter of you are justified. It is you have to justify.
Right.
And the definition of justification, the legal definition, is the act upon which the accused provides good and legal reasons for the actions that he was called upon for. Okay. You busted somebody's job. You better have a good and legal reason for us not to throw you into jail for doing that. Okay. So that's way different. I mean, that shifts it right there. Self-defense has unfortunately, and I'm sort of changing track here. Mm-hmm. Self-defense before I leave legal, self-defense is a legal term. Okay. Anything that you've heard from anybody else about self-defense or when they use that word, understand the only definition that matters is legal.
Right.
Okay. Because that's the standard you're going to be held accountable to. Okay. So the problem is that marketing, fighting is now wrong. Now, let's see, traveling around all those schools, okay, when you were a kid,
Yep.
you had to fight your way for your status, right?
Yep.
You new kid, hey, somebody's going to make a run at you.
Oh yeah.
Well, oh, by the way, by the time I was in what, ninth grade, I'd attended as many schools. So I really do understand you're bouncing around,
Yeah.
right? I moved around a lot, and I actually really thank that. And this is a rabbit moment, um, because it kept me from being acculturated into any one lifestyle,
Yes.
and that allowed me to see different lifestyles. Okay, but yeah, there was a lot of violence. But anyway, when we were kids, we would fight, and our teachers would walk up. Now we all knew fighting was wrong,
Yeah.
but the teachers would walk up. They'd wait for a minute. Kids are still two kids are fighting. Everybody's watching. Once it became clear who was winning the fight, the teachers would step in.
Right.
Okay, they grab us both. Notice how quickly I personalized that.
Yeah.
Damn. And we'd get frog marched to the vice principal's office, and the vice principal would give us punishment.
Right.
Now, in terms of hierarchy, think about what I just described. Who learned what?
Yeah. You gave this. They allowed the social outcome to happen. They allowed the hierarchy to be determined on who won and who
Kids,
didn't.
yes.
They took action before it got too out of hand and somebody really got hurt at
Right,
that
right.
point. Then they meted out punishment right away.
Wait a minute. There's when we got taken by the scruff of the neck,
Oh yes.
right?
Yes.
Does that bring back memory? Does it?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That's the jarring. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
you're like,
Um, that I mean, all the kids knew who won that fight,
yep.
but
They
we
also
also
knew, yeah, they recognized the authority. Yeah.
yeah, right. And above the teacher,
The VP.
the boy's vice principal.
Oh yeah.
Right. Again,
Oh yeah.
that tone of voice tells me you've been there, done that.
Very, very familiar with that progression.
Right.
Yeah.
But I mean, but if you think about it, it's like, wow, you learn it establishes a hierarchy.
Yeah. And
Okay.
it was allowed to play out. You know,
Yeah.
the issue that's happening now is we're having situations. This is actually a really interesting thing. You know,
Yeah.
the suppression of
Oh yeah, yeah,
what
yeah.
I would say healthy violence, healthy outcomes, especially for males,
Do it.
is having the opposite effect
Yes.
in here. And now what's happening is you're having, no matter who the participants are, both get suspended.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
what do the kids learn from that? They don't learn anything from
Right,
that.
right,
You know,
right.
there's no
Right.
clarity and stuff. And I think that's why we're having such trouble right now, not only just in society in general, but you know, I know recruiting, you know,
Cops.
people for cops or
Yeah.
no, these are kids that literally have gone through their whole life not putting hands on people, not
Without
understanding how to
never-
physically interact, you know?
Yeah. Yes. Put a push pin in that idea because that is really, really important. And let's come back to it.
Okay.
Okay. Now, part of the reason I took that kind of side path is fighting was not approved of, but it was understood.
Exactly.
Okay. And it was like back in the 70s when you were doing martial arts and in the 80s, etc., you were training to fight.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I did not go into the martial arts to become a fighter. I went into the martial arts to become a better fighter.
Right.
Okay. But fighting was a fact of life. It was part of it. Well, now because of the newer, better, more woke world, we're not allowed to fight. And marketing has had to follow suit. They do not teach fighting. They teach self-defense.
Yeah.
Okay. They've really peed in the pool on that.
Yeah.
Okay. Because of marketing, it's like, oh yeah, this is self-defense. This is, or all these other, claiming that, combative sports are, sports,
Yeah.
right? But inside, inside their heads, it's like, yeah, this is fighting. Um, so basically, people are having to lie about what self-defense is. And when we're talking about that, that's why my comment of the only definition of self-defense that matters is the legal one.
Right.
Okay, is the term has been so polluted and so messed up, and everybody knows what it means, and they really don't. Now, that was all set up for the following statement. There are different types of violence. Most of them are illegal. Um, one type is self-defense, but the other type is professional use of force and competing harms or competing evils. Okay, these are the three areas where you can justify using force to, like, say, hey, I had to go hands on. Okay, um, something like a drunk friend who is going to drive, and it's like, no, I'm not going to let you drive, and you have to end up sitting on it.
Right.
Okay, that's violence. Well, the fact of the matter is, you know, you're actually, it wasn't that you were fighting him. You're not trying to dominate. It's not social goals, right? It's not combat either, where you're trying to, like, take him out.
Right.
You are using force because of competing harms, or, contrasting evil. Depends on where you are, what they call it. You're trying to keep him from driving drunk, right? That's acceptable. Professional use of force, putting somebody arrest, escorting them off the property, that is allowable within limits. Okay, same thing with, by the way, you know, competing harms. Self-defense, same thing. You're basically, and it's funny because I have to explain this in a way that makes lawyers twitch, but I kind of like making lawyers twitch. Okay. Um, you were confessing to a crime when you claim self-defense.
Right.
Okay. That's where understanding justification,
It's huge.
right? Because most of the time, for a prosecutor to get a conviction, he's got to prove that you did it and why you did it. Okay. Meanwhile, the defense attorney picks the case, goes, is not, why are pants on fire, neater. Okay, so he tries to shred the DA's case. You claim self-defense, and again, watch for the lawyers to twitch. The burden of proof shifts to you. Now, to prove I actually do know what I'm talking about, you are confessing to the elements of a crime, and the production of evidence shifts to you. So now you have to show up with all this evidence, carry it in, set it down, go, hey, this is why it was self-defense.
Right.
Meanwhile, the DA gets to pick apart your case. Okay, so that's a real challenge right there. Now, shifting gears again, self-defense. Let's just use self-defense is like a box on the floor, or not a box, like tape, square. Okay, cross it this way, it's not self-defense. Cross it this way, it's not self-defense. Cross it this way, it's not and so on. Okay, that's at the lowest level. A higher level is like somebody put a table in the middle of that. And the parameters are much smaller. Okay, and it goes higher and higher. When you get to lethal force, it's like a stool on top of tables and chairs in the square. It's very, very narrow where the law will allow you to use it.
Right.
Okay, now with this stacked furniture analogy, you got the DA who's trying to kick it out. See, so that's the complication. But when people go, oh yeah, we teach self-defense,
No,
it's
teach
like,
fighting.
and by the way, fighting will not work against a lethal force threat.
Right.
You know, you have to react with appropriate and effective measures for the level of threat that you're facing. Okay, because you don't have enough time to do anything else. But part of the way that they'll try and kick the table out from under you is, well, couldn't you have tried this? Couldn't you have done that? Right? You should have tried this. See,
Would you agree? I had an attorney explain it to us one time, and he basically said that, hey, everything is an act of violence, and all violence is essentially criminal. He goes, what you're hoping for is after the fact, that after they go through everything, that they find, okay, this was a justified use of violence, therefore we're going to determine it's self-defense, or it's a criminal use, and now you're going to go through the process of being processed as a criminal on that. It was just a very arbitrary thing. The point he was trying to make was there's no such thing as self-defense. Self-defense is after what you're calling self-defense is actually violence. And he goes, after, it's an act of violence that is going to be judged, and after it's judged, it will be determined whether or not it's self-defense or that.
yes. And that is okay. The original phrasing, I was like, wait, what? Now that you've explained it, yes, he told you correctly.
Okay.
Right, and your interpretation of what he told you is correct. Okay. There is, however, a third option. Okay. It's either going to be found to have been legally justified, right? And by the way, the cops are trained to do this. Okay, it's not the cops get away with murder as so often as they're actually trained how to articulate what is involved in meeting the legal standards of what they did,
right,
for justification. You're going to get the table kicked out from under you. That's dealt legal, or criminal. You're going down unless you can fight it. The third option is what I refer to as the chicken bone in the throat of the system. Okay. And that is when you have your fecal matter so tightly packaged, okay, that the DA, unless there's political influence, the DA is going to look at it and go, this is going to be too hard to prosecute.
Interesting.
Okay. Now, let's talk about cops and DAs. Not too long ago, I was standing in front of a guy who was howling, barking, and drooling, who was bleeding all over the place. Now, the cops show up, and I'm like, okay, game has just changed. So I step back, and it's funny because I step back, lean up against a trash can, and, as the cop, I'm already doing this. As the cop says, step back. It's like, oh, you've done this before, haven't you? It's like, right. So I'm standing there, cops get in between us. Good. This other guy is still freaking out. And, the sergeant rolls up, looks at the situation, turns to me and goes, sir, what you're doing, what you did is known as dueling. You will be charged. Right? Very, very impressive. Right? I'm kind of leaning back, got my hands crossed in front of me, and it's like, yeah, we're going to have to talk about that. Right? So Cop's like, that's not the response I was expecting.
That's great.
Right? Um, Cop comes up, another cop comes up, we're talking. I explain what happened. And, I explain, look, this happened indoors. I got this guy out. I'm in between them. I'm trying to calm him down. I didn't hit him. Okay.
Right.
You can't arrest me for hitting him because I didn't hit him.
Right.
Right. But the senior officer, when he showed up, had decided that I had hit him. He made up his mind already. Right. And then they found out what really happened. Okay. And also, I articulated things in such a way that the officer that I was talking to went, okay, he's using not all the right words because I don't want to put that in, but it's like, yeah, this guy's telling me what happened here, and he's also doing a really good job of protecting people, right? Um, but the example of that officer who just arrived, the sergeant, right, he had the power to arrest, and he would have ordered my arrest had I not, kind of made this like, it's going to be really hard to charge me. Okay.
Yeah.
What a lot of people don't understand is often the decision to arrest is made by somebody who is not even at the scene. Okay, while you're talking to the cops, another cop walks over, calls the DA, and says, "This is what we got. This is the data and the evidence we have already." And the DA will say, "Arrest." Okay, and that's going to happen once that order to arrest, once that decision to arrest has been made. All the other talking, everything they're doing is building a case against you.
Right.
Okay, and the problem is if it's like, oh, it was self-defense, it's like you just came out and admitted to the officer that you did violence.
Right.
Okay, so there's all sorts of stuff that comes with this. One of the things I say is the higher the level of force, the more you need an attorney present when you make a statement. Don't, people say, oh, shut up and lawyer up. It's like, no, if you claim self-defense, you're going to have to make a statement. Okay, you're going to have to tell the cops what to do, and you need to know how to explain the situation in such a way that it is going to make it really hard for the prosecutor to win. Okay, now part of where this gets challenging, and this is something that I end up doing a lot as an expert witness, which, by the way, sounds really cool that lawyers pay me, right? Ooh, isn't that cool? Yeah, the downside is I have to deal with lawyers.
Yes.
But one of the things is like, say there's an interview, and I've seen this happen on multiple occasions, because cops are trained how to explain violence in such a way that will build their defense. When they're asking you questions, if they're getting too close to an answer they don't want to hear, they're going to change the subject. Okay.
Interesting.
They know if they ask the next question, there's going to be exculpatory evidence introduced. So they change the topic. Okay. And this especially is true when they've been ordered to arrest. Okay. And if you don't say it, if it's not mentioned in the interview,
Right.
There's going to be a hell of a fight about introducing evidence that you knew something. Okay, and that's how the legal battle. It is way more Machiavelli, sneaky, and nasty than people realize. But a lot of times, beginners will just come out as like, the cops here. I'll tell them all. This is what happened. I can't wait to tell them what happened. And they dig themselves into going to prison.
So just for clarification, I understand the higher use, the more important it is to make sure the lawyer's there when present. But when you say you're going to have to make a statement, I just want to make sure that people get what you're saying. You're saying, yes, you're going to have to make a statement, but do not make the statement until your attorney is present. Is that what you were
Well,
asking
it's
people to do?
the higher level of force.
Okay.
You see, I hate the thing. I hate shut up and lawyer
Right.
as a rule. When we talked about simple solutions,
Yeah.
stop and think about that. Shut up and lawyer up about a traffic ticket.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
come on, man.
Yeah.
Number one, the odds are you were speeding.
Right. Right.
Okay, you got popped. Just deal
Yeah.
with it. One of the best bits of advice I have ever heard about dealing with cops, and this, by the way, is speaking of somebody who has been roughed up and tuned up by the cops, but
Hmm.
who's also turned around and taught cops. Okay, do not fail the personality test. Right, kids at home, write that down. Right?
Yeah.
Um, most people will fail the personality test when dealing with a cop. Well, the cop's got the pin. He can keep on writing. I had a girlfriend who she failed the personality test, and what was a failure to clear an intersection, right, turned into a 1987 $1,000 ticket.
Wow.
The more she talked, the more he wrote.
Wow.
Okay. Um, and again, this is where when you're talking about and feelings and entitlement getting you into trouble, that works with cops too.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, if you claim self-defense, okay. Now understand the two most common responses to illegal violence is Saudi, some other dude did it,
Okay.
and self-defense. Man, what I did was self-defense. Well, you just copped to it.
Right.
Okay. So if you're going to claim self-defense, you actually have to take like a chess player's mindset about how do you articulate, how do you say certain things, you get them on record, right? And understand that there's all kinds of dirty pool. You were talking about boxing, the violence going on behind.
Yes.
Well, with the legal system, there's all kinds of dirt going on. And, you know, learning that's what you're up against and that you have to, well, learning that's what you're up against is the first step. Then learning how to work that. Um, because, and the third thing on that one is you need to have a lawyer who knows how to defend an innocent person or a person who acted in self defense. Okay, most lawyers are nothing more than plea bargain machines these days.
Right.
Okay, what they're going to do is minimize the damage. Um, and again, having a really good attorney is part of being the chicken bone in the throat of the process, as well as what you know and how you know how to present, right? That,
Hmm.
okay, start justifying. Okay, legal meaning of the word, self defense, legal meaning of the term. Um, if you invest in it, because like any term that you use, expect it to be challenged. Okay, you've heard the defense. I was in fear for my life,
Yes.
right? That was
That's
very,
the one. That's the one they tell everybody. You got to do
yeah,
that
I
one
know,
right away. I was in fear for my
right?
life.
Now, you don't think prosecutors haven't run across that before?
Right.
Now, so you know what the next move of a prosecutor is when you say, "I was in fear for my life." Why?
And that's where you have to understand how to talk. At that point.
Yes, and most people, when the prosecutor asks why, they freeze like deer in a headlight.
Right.
Right now, let me give you guys just a little tidbit of a trick that attorneys will play. They will ask, how did you know you were in danger? Okay. Well, to whip out my sci-fi nerd credentials, it's a trap.
Yeah.
Um, this may sound like splitting hairs, but that's what law is about.
Yes.
You don't need to know with absolute 100% certainty that you were in danger. Okay? You're not psychic. And that's what they're going to tell you if you claim you know.
Right.
They'll shred you if you say that you know. Okay? But you said it, you've set the standard. What you need is to reasonably believe. Okay? Now, reasonable belief is predicated on prior knowledge.
Okay.
So, if you know how crimes happen, okay, if you see a set of patterns of predictable and developing and escalating circumstances, it is reasonable to believe you're being set up for a crime.
Right.
And that warrants certain responses. Okay? If
Can
you
you, can you
wait
give
until
can you give a hypothetical on that? Can you give like I had reasonable belief um based off of the other guy's actions that
yeah,
came in
it's
that
gotta be
proved
external.
towards that.
Right.
And yeah, that really helps because people when it's funny, Mark, when I get these questions about that, and again, I'm the first one to say I'm not the person to ask, and I'll direct them other places. The only thing I try to make clear as an instructor of violence, basically self-protection, when you'd ever use the tool, is just make sure you're devoid of choice. Make sure you're truly devoid of choice, because that's your first standard. Because if you had an exit, if you had a way, or you willingly chose to engage at that point,
Right.
it's a crapshoot at that
Right.
point.
Well, okay. You are so right in so many ways that let me just pick one of the things.
Okay, that was part 3. Um, just great stuff. Now listen, the book that really puts all of this together, all of this information together, is What You Don't Know Can Kill You. And I highly recommend you get it on Amazon, lots of different areas. Also, make sure that you're visiting Marc's main site, which is no nonsense self-defense.com. We will have that in the notes below. His professional site, if you need his professional help, you can seek him out at marcmacyoung.com. Again, that will all be in the show notes. I hope that you are really understanding, how valuable this type of information is, because again, we talk about the punching and kicking, we talk about things like that. But what people don't talk about is all of the interpretations by the law and how you have to talk about this stuff and what you really mean when you say self-defense. And this is really helping clarify that. We'll tie it all up with the last part 4 of this. But please keep making your comments and let me know what you think. And we will finish this out. Now, again, surviveviolence.com. Please, send your friends there. Send every free masterclass, no BS. It's really great stuff, and it helps grow this channel. Also, please subscribe, and thanks so much for all of your help in growing the channel. Until next time, stay safe.